First, this is a Goffstown Conservation Commission meeting, February 22nd, 2023. First, we have a presentation for map 23, lot 13 and 11. A proposed subdivision lot line adjustment and request for relief of the outer 50 of the 100-foot wetland surface water conservation district buffer. The proposal is to adjust the lot lines between the two existing lots and create a third lot. The applicants are also requesting relief of the outer 50-foot of the 100-foot WSWC district buffer to allow for the proposed driveway improvements that will encroach within that outer 50-foot buffer. The properties are located at Chattel Avenue, owned by Vincent and Nicholas Urban and Astron Holdings. The Conservation Commission site walked the property on November 1st, 2022. A recommendation needs to be forwarded to the planning board. Yeah.
Before we start that, we need to do a roll call.
Oh, sorry. Well, come on. Okay, fine. Roll call.
Susan Cochran.
Hi.
Hollis Adams, Select Board Representative.
Patty Gale, Planning Assistant.
Andrew Chaplin.
David Neiman.
Evelyn Miller.
All right. Now we can go on to the plan. Thanks,
Before we
David.
get this one out of the way, right?
Us is ready to go.
You need to go? Okay, you got it. You got him.
Okay.
Before we, I also want to note that I passed out, that's on the table, that wasn't mailed to you, the copy of the report from the site walk. It's under a
Yes.
revised agenda. I passed it out in case you guys didn't have it. Do you want one too?
Nah, I can wing it.
Okay.
I think I remember most of it. This plan is partially from the wetland functions values. I don't know if everybody's gone through it or not, but it discusses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different wetlands.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Could you state your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Craig Francisco, Bedford
Thank you.
Design Consultants. I apologize. The base map of this is the wetland function values. The orange is the isolated wetlands talked about. The blue is the northern. Green is obviously the central one, I think you call it. Yes. Yellow one and the red is the vernal pool we all talked about. Gray is the pavement, it's existing. We're proposing 2 driveways. Well, we should back up a little bit. It's 2 lots, one to here and a second one to here. The second lot includes the existing duplex. So we're proposing to do a lot line adjustment / subdivision. The duplex would be on its own lot. This would be a second lot, and this would be the third lot. We've changed since the site walk, per I think it was Kimberly mentioned, to move this driveway as far away from this yellow wetland, which is really the only one that has any value whatsoever. So we slid that a little bit south, kept the grading a little bit off these wetlands. It's like 10, 15 feet. This driveway, I'm going to start down here. This driveway is super elevated to the south. So the runoff, well, I should back up a little more. The runoff from the house, we propose building a stone trench, foundation drain around it. So the roof runoff should mostly infiltrate. Get a 50-year storm, some of it might go out in the yard a little bit. All this area is going to drain towards the driveway. The driveway is super elevated towards the south. So any runoff from the driveway will go to the south. We're not planning on paving, it's going to be a gravel driveway. There's a ditch proposed here. There's another ditch, a little tiny piece right here. This is a cut section of the driveway. So we have a little bit of ditch here. This ditch goes to this detention basin. Outlets to here. This ditch also goes to this same outlet area. This driveway, we have 2 wetland crossings, proposed wetland crossings that are approved by DES. Obviously it's not built yet. This area currently drains pretty much down through here towards, well, I can't pronounce the last name, to this lot, beside the brook, across Wandre Ave. The driveway come up here with a hammerhead for the fire department turn around. This is in a cut section. So this area will now drain to the road, to the driveway, sorry, up the road, and down to the brook. Same with this whole area is cut section, so it's going to drain to the brook. We were hoping to get a little bit of a basin of some sort in this area, but it's too steep and it's pretty steep and it's pretty ledgy. We kind of decided we'd probably do more harm than good by doing anything in there. And then we have a ditch coming down here. It also flows into the wetland. The background goes back into the brook, Shadow Ave. The drainage report does say that the discharge to this culvert is slightly less pre than post, and most of that is just because of redirecting the water, so it takes longer to get there. And this is being detained in this. That's my brief little questions. Yes?
I just want to clarify, twice you said the lower drive was super elevated.
Yes.
What does super elevated mean? I'm envisioning the Great Wall of China here.
Mini Wall of China. Usually the driveway has a crown, so the middle is higher than both edges.
Right.
In this case, if you're driving in the right side, it'll be higher than the left side. So it's all going to drain. So it's
So
up.
it's like a foot higher on one side?
Oh, not even that much.
Just a few.
2% across the 20, or yeah, so it's not even a foot.
Okay.
So you did a functional assessment of all wetlands on the property,
Yes.
and when did you document the vernal pool? Is it in the report somewhere or not?
Yes.
Through the whole report?
It is in the full report.
Okay, you analyzed the whole site, and that's the only one that you observed or documented?
Yes. This area is definitely not a vernal pool. I mean, that's dry most of the year. I mean, I know vernal pools are dry most of the year. Don't get me wrong, but this is, that's definitely, this is the only one. These are, I should back up. This yellow and red wetland, this parcel was owned by the town back in the 50s and 60s, and the town took some gravel out of here. And that's why this is wet. And that's also why this is wet, because you can see this little road come up here. There's some digging done up in here. They got into the water table as well, trying to find more gravel. So that's why these are wet. That's just a natural wetland, and there's a little bit of a drainage way / brook going through here. But we walked pretty much. We came in here, walked up into here, turned around, came back. Went kind of something like this. And went up in here, came back down through here. But yes, that's the only possible vernal pool.
So Greg, I think I heard you say brook a couple of times. Is there an actual, is it an intermittent stream, or what type of water flow is it? Is it flowing when you're out there?
Yes, it's flowing year round. It's about, in this area, well, it all goes through an 18-inch pipe, so it's not huge. Up in this area, it goes underground in several places and then pops back out again later on. Up in here, it's actually very nice. I mean,
So it's a perennial stream, it flows
Yes,
year round?
it does flow year round.
Even though it may go subterranean in some way.
It's still flowing, but yes. But it doesn't show up in the USGS sheet. So it's not, it's not a blue line in the USGS sheet, but it is, I would still call it a brook.
It's very ledgy,
Yes.
you know, all along that brook area, and then a lot of the terrain, I would say, it was ledgy along
Well,
the
this little crosshatch areas are ledge.
very, very
There's
ledgy.
more, there's some more in little pieces in here. But
And
it's all ledgy through this brook area, that's for sure.
And then most of the wetlands that he's showing, you know, the orange and the yellow, it's a, during some periods it'd be grassy, you know, and then but I think it really is left over from, when it had been used as a gravel pit area.
This one's quite, not even grassy, just a big heavy moss in the summertime.
Okay. And then actually, one of those areas had been used really for staging for wood. I
Yes.
mean, you know, their lumber cuts, they had just, you could see they were still left stuff over, you know, lying around in there.
Part of this.
Now, I know in the report, did you want to show, there, you know, there's still there is the old, if you said this was in 50s, probably 50s truck or something, fuel
Well,
truck that's
Yeah,
still,
there's an existing driveway right about here. Well, not right about it, it's here. And in this area, there's looks like an old fuel truck. There's some other tires.
yes, I thought it was up a
There's
little.
a mattress laying down in here.
Oh, lots of mattresses.
Yeah, there's
The neighborhood has used it as
a
a
lot of
dumping
junk
area.
right there. There was another old vehicle there also, wasn't there? Fuel truck.
Yeah,
And then there was two
yeah, there
vehicles, a
was-
fuel
yeah.
truck and something else.
And then I think a car or something like
I
that.
think we only saw the field truck though. We didn't.
No, I actually.
Did you see it?
Yeah,
Oh.
I actually.
Yeah.
Um, um, It's not the most beautiful piece of property. I mean, to be honest, it looks, where the green is, the stream, that area there is really very, would be wonderful hiking.
Yes.
You know, crawling around and hiking.
And actually, this is nice too, because this is Megan's Crossing subdivision for condominiums. This bank is super steep.
Mhm.
This valley, how do it's, I bet it doesn't get more than an hour of sunshine in August. It's, it ravines straight down. I was up in here one time, and I heard somebody talking. Who's that? And the guy I was surveying with, I said, wait a minute, that sounds like Peter Shower. It does sound like Peter. I hollered. He was, yeah, what are you doing? He was down here trying to get flag to see if it was wetland or not. It's nice down there. You know, you want to go down there and eat lunch? No, it's nice and cool. Buggy, but cool. Weird.
Now, along the road, there is a swale that has been cut to carry water, probably from that yellow wetland. So it
Yes.
goes all along the road, and there's green, yeah, that then goes to the culvert. So there is a lot of water coming, and it really does, from the left side, that's higher than, and everything, the terrain goes down towards the road. So when it's standing up like this, somehow visually you're thinking, well, it should, but it's not. It's really,
No, it all basically flows this way,
yeah. There you go.
top of the hill from here, right
Yeah.
about here.
Yeah, and the rails to trail sits above the orange right there. So that's the higher point, and then it heads down. But when you cross the green, and they chose the very narrowest wetland area, that then climbs up where you're planning on building. Does that make sense? So it's almost, yes, that's what it is. Hot, it comes right in, and the low pit where the yellow is, that's where the gravel pit was. Okay.
Any more questions?
Well, there's some minor revisions in the plan, moving the camera head a little bit, pushing the buildings a little bit, just to,
I know. I was curious about that. Your building area is very close to the railroad, rails to trail, isn't it?
yes.
I was just,
Well, you have an outer 50-foot buffer from this wetland. You get the outer 50-foot from this wetland,
oh,
so it only leaves basically that area.
So, we wanted him to come back in before, just to go over the site walk, and there was concern about the drainage going into the river. He is on the planning board's agenda tomorrow night, and they would like to get like a recommendation or comments from the Conservation Commission. And so that's why he's here tonight.
very brief report. Andrew and I were on this, and then Kimberly Peace was from planning, and she walked with it. I think it's a very difficult piece of property. It doesn't lay flat, you know, and it doesn't even slope, and you know. And the wetland, the stream is probably the most valuable of the wetlands. And the other orangey yellow areas are really, again, I think they have dug down too low or gotten close to the surface water, or table water. And there is that little vernal pool. So it was just a difficult piece of property to assess, and I think our biggest concern is, other than the trash that's been left on there, I mean, including the trucks and things like that, that it really had to be engineered properly, and we're not, you know, engineer people to tell you how to get the water across, and diminished because it does slope. It hits the road, and there is a big culvert, and then you have neighbors across the way. So that will be the big concern, which you'll need to have somebody come in to engineer the drainage system.
So what were identified as the primary wetland functions? And how did we
It's been a while since I read it, to be honest with you.
inside? I didn't want to sit here and jump through a report off.
Central wetland, he's saying its principal function and values are groundwater recharge / discharge, visual quality aesthetics. That would be the green one. Visual quality aesthetics are found to be significant due to the forest cover of the stream. He says, though in minimal in terms of flow, not a babbling brook, and nearby bedrock outcrops. The southern and southeastern, which is the yellow one, I think. Yes, the yellow, and the isolated one, which is the orange. For isolated, determined that 3 wetland functions are present: groundwater recharge / discharge, flood flow alteration, and wildlife habitat.
Did the NHB check turn up anything?
Pardon me?
The NHB?
No.
Check turn up anything? No?
Didn't turn anything up. I was surprised. I thought for sure it would. Matter of fact, Kimberly Peace and I were talking about that one night. She goes, "Did you get an NHB letter?" I said, "We haven't got it back yet." She goes, "Well, you know there's gonna be a hit." And I said, "Oh, I'm sure there is." But no, there wasn't.
So
Nothing.
it's nothing really remarkable from
No.
a functional
No.
assessment standpoint.
The only thing, like I said, the only thing that's really even anywhere near, I think, any value would be this section of the green.
Okay, thank you.
It's very ledgy, very, definitely forested. I mean, this little piece right here shouldn't be colored, that's not wet, but there's definitely some wildlife habitat associated with this area. And we're not even getting anywhere near the northern part of it.
Thank you.
John, look at the recommendation from them. Right, committee,
Well, Evan, you and Andrew walked it, what?
I think,
is
I
that-
mean, it seemed to me that they tried their best to stay out of, to minimize their impacts, so. Regardless of, like
I mean-
Evelyn said, the engineering aspect, I'm not an expert.
It's the engineering, yeah,
Seems like
our
a
concern would be
planning
that it
issue,
would be
yeah.
properly, engineered for the drainage aspect of it because of the way
Right,
it goes down, but as far as,
so it doesn't impact other people that already live there, because the drainage is taken care of, so it's not gonna impact.
That
neighbors,
was, that
you-
was a concern at the previous planning board meeting, because this
Right.
lady was worried about the water that flows through this little, I don't think she realized where it came from, but her backyard got pretty wet in the spring. Like I mentioned, the house and the driveway are gonna cut this flow off. She should get less water, 'cause this water's gonna drain down the road, down the driveway. So all this is not gonna go towards her, and now this area goes that way. All this area goes this way now.
so you're saying it should improve that?
It should improve her situation, yes. And all the other water's going to the brook and through this culvert, so there's no other, I mean, these guys aren't gonna be affected, we aren't doing anything up there. This is really the main problem.
Okay.
We talked to Scott, I can't pronounce his last name, Ozana?
Yep.
Wow. About this culvert, about this culvert, because there's an 18-inch culvert coming out of Megan's Crossing is about here, just off the map. And this is an 18-inch culvert also. Initially, no matter what we did, the 50-year storm was overtopping the road right here in the computer. So I went and talked to Scott. He said it's not done overtop. We had that storm in, it seems like a couple weeks ago now, but it was actually November. And I drove down, I saw a new gravel on the shoulder. They fixed the culvert. So I called him up, he goes, no, the culvert got crushed. We replaced the end of the culvert. That's why there's new gravel there. It did not overflow the road. So we had to remodel all of Megan's Crossing to make this work. If everybody says it doesn't overflow, the computer has to be agreeing somehow. That was quite the challenge, actually. That was the biggest challenge we had to figure out what this culvert was doing.
That's Morgan Estates.
Yes. Megan, not
I
Morgan.
just mean,
You knew what I meant. Megan, Morgan, close.
David has the comment.
Just a question,
Okay.
a few minutes ago, Patty, you had mentioned that this was, you'd come back in because there were concerns about drainage flowing to the river,
yeah.
and we haven't really discussed that. I just want to know what those concerns were, how the concerns are being addressed, or what the answer to that is, or whether there's mitigation or whatever. Or whether the concerns were even valid. I just want to know what the answer to that is, since if that's the reason it came back, then.
Well, he wasn't present,
We should be,
because
yeah.
and he was advised he didn't need to come to the meeting because you were gonna discuss the report from the site walk. And then
Yeah.
when everyone started talking about, there was concerns, well, how eventually this is gonna go into the river? How is he treating the drainage from the site so it doesn't drain towards the river? And after further discussion, we thought he should come back in and just explain, and he wasn't changing the plan.
Okay, so specifically, what are those concerns, and are they valid concerns? That's my first question. Make sure it's not speculation, but you know, what is the reality of the situation? Is there any possibility of an increasing flow to the river?
So, if I can just sort of paraphrase from the recommendations of the assessment. Two recommendations. The first was, well, obviously, best management practices. Typical. First would be no further encroachment or cutting of the with the vegetation within the woodland buffer adjacent to the wetlands to help buffer and therefore protect water quality. And the second was infiltration trenches around the drip edges of the houses to infiltrate the runoff from the roofs. So I just share that with you to paraphrase. It seems appropriate to me.
And so from that, we can conclude we would not be seeing an increase of flow, untreated flow to the river.
There's actually a decrease to this culvert.
Yeah.
Slight decrease.
Okay, thank you.
So and what's proposed is a house or a duplex on each one of those? Is that,
I'm showing a duplex.
Okay.
I don't know what's gonna be built. I'm just showing a duplex because I gotta show a driveway to get the
But it
conditional
really-
use permit, so driveway has to go someplace, so I showed a duplex. It's the
But
highest use, it's the most.
it's not, I mean, we're not talking big development right here.
No, we
Yeah,
don't-
anything beyond a duplex, they'd have to come in for a site plan.
Right.
Right. We're allowed a single-family dwelling or a duplex in this zone, so I showed a duplex because it's
Okay.
most dense. I figured I might as well, didn't want to show a single-family house, and everybody said, oh, you could do a duplex.
So did you want to pass off the report to the planning board that was done with all the concerns listed and also what was recommended in the assessment and the wetlands assessment report?
I would think that would be advisable. The report that goes forward to the planning board is to implement the recommendations that came out of the wetland functional assessment report. Utilize best management practices.
Do you want any of this to go
Oh,
forward?
and cleanup.
Oh.
Cleanup of the site with the,
Site needs.
the
Absolutely.
trash and hazardous waste.
Oh, absolutely, the cars
Yeah.
and the truck, again, the
Yeah,
old fuel truck
probably
and
that-
the
that's
rest of
probably
the,
first
yeah,
comment.
it really needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah, oh yes, I think that condition would be prior to getting a building permit on this lot to clean that up.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely,
Right.
yeah. That's really, yeah, stuff left over, I think, from whatever, and then it does become the local dump.
Yeah, it's gotta be cleaned up. You don't want your driveway going by an ugly old fuel truck and car, all that kind of mattresses and everything else that's in
Right.
there. I mean, there's a bunch of stumps and all kind of things right in the middle of the driveway. They're gonna obviously have to be moved because your driveway's in the way.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's gonna improve the property.
Yeah, well, it also says, I think it'll take care of a butter that gets a wet yard, and then maybe that'll take care of a lot of that too.
It
Yeah.
should help her.
Mhm.
It's not gonna make it worse, that's for sure.
Okay.
So we need a recommendation to go forward to the planning board.
Captured all, Patty?
Yeah, I'm gonna take it from that report
Okay.
about the cleanup, but
Yeah.
someone needs to make a motion.
Well, I move that I would include the report that was done, our sidewalk report, and then
So we
the
send a memo-
assessment.
Send a memo to the planning board.
Yeah.
And include the recommendation from the assessment report.
Yeah.
At the end. Okay?
Yeah,
And the
As
wetland
well.
evaluation report.
Yeah, as well as the removal of the waste, all waste on the property.
oh, that was a biggie,
Prior to a building permit being issued?
yes. I think it should be inspected to make sure that it's done, I'm sorry, I really do. I think, so what you're saying, prior to the building inspection permit, I think somebody should go and,
Verify that it's been cleaned up.
yeah,
It's not a lot, guys.
Well, obviously, somebody's gonna go, out during the building permits process, somebody's gonna go out and be inspecting
Yeah.
the building.
Right.
So you're gonna notice if that truck's still there. But
Well.
it can't hurt to go look at it, I guess.
I don't think it hurts.
Yeah, well, if we include the comment now, it'll be there for the building inspector to see and know what to look for.
Yeah.
so.
And there's
And it
all
actually,
these
so it was a car and a truck, the fuel truck, and then
DPWs.
multiple mattresses and some furniture and stuff like that.
Miscellaneous trash.
Trash.
Okay,
You gonna vote on it?
Well, we need a second.
Oh,
I'll
sorry.
second that.
All right, Susan seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I got a silly question. If it snows like crazy tomorrow, when it's supposed to, what's the odds of the planning board being canceled?
You want
I
a silly
don't,
Yes.
answer?
I don't know,
Okay.
honestly. What's your, if you wanna write down your cell number, if worst case scenario, like if they close town hall or
That would be
something,
good.
I can, I know they'll post something on the door, and if we're open, I would be getting in contact with everyone.
In fact, I think it's supposed to snow heaviest
Yes.
during the evening, isn't it?
In the evening
Yeah.
tomorrow, so we'd
Alright.
probably be open if they do, what they do is they try and notify everyone on the
Oh, yeah.
website, and they'll post it.
Yeah, but I think they're talking about like an inch an
Just in
hour.
case, for some reason, I'm told I can't come to
You
town.
don't know these.
Yeah, I don't live that far away, but
Miles.
But so far, it's still
Without
happening.
boots.
Both
And-
ways.
Yes, and in the driving, right. Anyway. Very hard site.
No, I just, no,
thank you.
Thank you.
We don't need to keep these, right?
You
Lines,
can.
I had to cover
Provide me
everything and
I
try
can
and
take
figure
mine.
out what
Wanna
things
see
are-
these?
They got it.
What's going on.
Oh. no,
Okay.
okay.
All right.
All right, next up we have map 1, lot 38, presentation of NHDS wetlands major impact permit application for the upper reservoir dam repair located off Back Mountain Road, owned by Goffstown Village Water Precinct. And we have a presentation here, if you wouldn't mind stating your names.
Absolutely. My name is Devin Herrick. I'm a certified wetland scientist with Weston Sampson.
TJ Blair, project engineer and project manager for Weston Sampson. engineering.
Thank you.
So we will be looking, this is not currently submitted, we will be looking to submit this major impact wetlands application in the near future. We're just waiting to finish one set of meetings with the Army Corps, just to finish up our discussions on mitigation efforts. And then we're going to be looking to submit, but in the meantime, we wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to hear any comments or questions that you folks might have about the project. So I'll let TJ give some background to start.
Yeah.
So,
Let's switch.
a preliminary question before you go.
Absolutely.
So you have a pre-application meeting with DES and
Yes.
federal agencies?
Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
absolutely.
So this is the proposed improvements and repairs to Upper Reservoir Dam in Goffstown. So Upper Reservoir is part of a public drinking water system owned and operated by the Goffstown Village Water Precinct. So, general overview plan. Our printer had a bad day.
Yours are actually
please
much
forgive-
nicer.
Please forgive. But here we show Upper Reservoir, which is an impoundment of Whittle Brook. The impoundment is created by Upper Reservoir Dam. And the discharge from Upper Reservoir flows directly into Tailwater Pond, and that is a Lower Reservoir. Lower Reservoir is also impounded by a downstream dam. Upper Reservoir Dam is a roughly 345-foot long embankment, earthen embankment. It has a central concrete and masonry spillway that just conveys the normal and storm discharges into Lower Reservoir. The reservoir is operated on a regular basis, so there is a bottom valve in the spillway that is used to operate the reservoir, fluctuated based on water supply demands for the water precinct. So it's not unusual for the reservoir to, over the course of a given year, go from full to drained, back to full to drained. And so the dam was constructed and the reservoir was created in the 1930s, late 1930s. It had gone through a couple short stints of repairs. There have been issues over the years, safety issues. However, most recently in 2016, a serious sinkhole had developed on the dam, which jeopardized the safety of the dam and could have led to a failure of the dam and an uncontrolled evacuation of the reservoir. And so the DES Dam Bureau issued a letter of deficiency requiring the reservoir to be drained to mitigate that potential hazard. The repairs were made, however, they were kind of, it was a Band-Aid. It was a good Band-Aid, but it was nonetheless a Band-Aid. And that prompted further investigation into the overall design and construction of the dam and how it's performed over the years, which led into learning of additional issues, safety deficiencies, design and construction issues associated with the dam. And so the DES Dam Bureau issued a second letter of deficiency in 2019, essentially ordering the water precinct to address these safety issues with the dam and bring it into compliance with their regulations. And so that is why we are here today. So we have developed a proposed plan to mitigate the current safety issues and to bring this dam into compliance. And what is currently proposed, here's the existing survey plan with delineated wetlands that Devin will get into once I'm done. Some of these drawings aren't entirely relevant to what we're talking about here, but I will. Sorry. Okay. Some of this may be difficult to see. I'll do my best to point to things as I discuss them. So as I mentioned, it's an embankment dam. If you're standing in the reservoir looking at the dam, the upstream slope is what you see first. The top of the dam, the crest and the downstream slope would be the slope opposite the upstream slope descending into lower reservoir. Again, we have a concrete spillway that basically splits the embankment in half and conveys flows into lower reservoir. What is proposed, and I'll kind of step through based on area of the dam, there's currently some stone riprap on the upstream slope as a wave protection armoring to protect the underlying embankment soil fill. The riprap is deteriorated and has been displaced and is missing from areas, and so grading of the slope is not necessarily going to change. However, the riprap is going to be reconstructed. So it would be removed, it would be replaced with new riprap to carry the performance of the dam on. The crest of the dam will simply be resurfaced as is. The downstream slope, just really the downstream side of the dam is where the majority of the work would occur in terms of the improvements. That is where the majority of the deficiencies were recognized. And so the downstream slope of the dam is quite steep, and from a engineering standpoint, a steeper slope is in a more unstable slope or more prone to stability issues. And so what we're proposing is to flatten that slope by filling and grading, and flatten that slope out to a more stable inclination that'll allow the dam to meet the stability parameters that the DES Dam Bureau requires. So that slope will be flattened to a 3 horizontal to 1 vertical, whereas currently it ranges from 1.6 horizontal to roughly 2 horizontal to 1 vertical. So a considerable improvement to stability of the embankment. Within that, or between the existing slope and the flattened slope, there will be filters and drain zones placed between those 2 layers. One of the other issues, more serious issues with this dam is ongoing seepage. Because it is really just a soil dam, water stored in the reservoir creates pressure on the dam and flows through that soil and exits in areas downstream that are critical, and that seepage exiting through the dam tends to lead to lower stability, and so containing that seepage within the embankment, not letting it emerge through the face of the dam, is something that those filter and drain zones will help with. The spillway is also an area that the spillway structure, this kind of entire channel here, is a component of this dam that needs some serious attention. What we are proposing with the spillway channel is the upstream part, so the part upstream of the center line here, will generally stay as is. There'll be some concrete and masonry repairs. The majority of the work will occur downstream of the center line. This entire channel section will essentially be reconstructed, and just kind of leave it at that. Really, it'll be reconstructed. It's quite old and it's quite deteriorated, and the function of the spillway is not appropriate given today's standards for design of these types of structures. So considerable improvements will be made to the spillway itself. In order to carry out these repairs, they are significant. The repairs and improvements, they are significant, and they cannot be done with a full reservoir, or really with much of any reservoir being stored behind it for that matter. A lot of the area down here, which the dam itself relies on for stability, will be exposed, it will be excavated, there'll be considerable disturbance, and to try to accomplish that work with a full reservoir is quite dangerous. And so, particularly given the nature of this being a public water supply reservoir and it not being unusual for the reservoir to be full and drained and full and drained again on a relatively frequent basis. We're proposing to use the bottom valve to drain the reservoir for construction. It cannot be completely drained. There will still be some dead storage down in low areas here. And that goes in line with another issue is access to this side of the dam. Crossing the spillway is currently done, it's like a 2.5 foot wide little rickety footbridge that's frankly not safe at all. So vehicles are not going to be able to use that, and it's essentially an open channel below that bridge. And in order to get to this side of the dam, there's hardly any options. Going this way around would require a temporary stream crossing. It would require clearing of a lot of land and cutting in of an access way up steep ravine slopes. Going all around the reservoir this way would be quite the travel. It would still require temporary stream crossings and still require a substantial access road around the reservoir itself and disturbance of land. So what we're currently proposing in combination with lowering the reservoir temporarily for construction is to build an access road supported on geotextiles, and the access road would be made of material that can be easily removed. So it is a temporary measure, but an access road along the upstream side of the dam that would also serve as a temporary cofferdam for the residual water that would be stored here, and there would be a bypass to provide continuous downstream flows throughout the course of construction. And so this is a two-component proposed element, a temporary element of the project, an access road and a low cofferdam to contain any residual water, because there will need to be some isolated work occurring in here, and that area would need to be temporarily dewatered. We have identified staging areas, temporary contractor staging areas, one on this end and one on this end to hopefully reduce trucking, the number of truck travels back and forth, so the contractor could stage materials relevant to where the work is occurring on each side of the dam. This dark line here is the boundary of the limit of work. There would be some work occurring in the upstream end of lower reservoir as well, and so that work is not necessarily sensitive to the reservoir, the level of upper reservoir, and so we've tried to contain that work with a proposed cofferdam, which would be like a bulk sandbag style cofferdam with a liner and entirely removable afterwards. The slope would be grassed with the exception of the toe area, which would be protected with stone as lower reservoir tends to fluctuate itself, and we'd want to protect the toe of the embankment from ice action and any mainly ice, and just scour over the years to come. So I think that covers it.
All right.
Now what you all probably care about.
Can we ask a few questions before you start?
Please.
How long is the project supposed to be, and how long does it take to drain the water? How long is it going to be to start this and end it? And then this is dependent on, this water is for Goffstown.
Yes.
So what are they doing in interim to take care of the water needs of the Goffstown people?
So lower reservoir is the primary drinking water source. Lower reservoir will be maintained at its full capacity.
Okay.
Upper reservoir is a reserve water source. So really, the way the water precinct utilizes this is they use upper reservoir to fill lower reservoir when lower reservoir needs to be filled. So during dry spells, during drier periods is when you might see lower reservoir very low. During normal conditions, both of them may be full. The duration of the project could be on the order of,
It was 3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months. Not all of the work is dependent on the reservoir being drained. So, and there will be a point at which work is substantially complete enough to where they can begin filling the reservoir, because it will take some time. However, it is a relatively small reservoir, so it does not take, it would not take an extremely long time to reach the lowest level, and it would not take an extraordinary amount of time for it to fill back up either. If this was a very massive reservoir, we would have likely proposed something else.
So for a little bit of a historical perspective, it's an interesting system. It is the source water, drinking water supply for the Village Water Precinct. I forgot how many users there are. I want to say somewhere around 1,100 to 1,200 users, something on that order. But it's an entirely passive system. There's no pumps. Obviously there's some pumping and valves, but there's no pumps to move the water. So as it comes down from there, it comes down into the village, and from there, there's also an underground cistern, a 1-million-gallon underground cistern, which is actually right outside my front door, up Patty Hill.
Oh.
And so during periods of high demand or low flow, they'll supplement the flow from the cistern and draw that down to supplement flow down through the distribution system down into the village. So it's a pretty interesting system.
There's the bottom valve that would be used to drain the reservoir. There's a conduit, a pipe that is actually under the current spillway that goes along this alignment, and then it angles off and kind of runs around the side of the reservoir there. So another tidbit of information, I guess.
Well, as long as we're learning how the system works. So we also have the large pumps system, which is in the aquifer along the river as part of the whole system. How do these, obviously these two high points are going to provide head to the system, pressure to pressurize it. How is that integrated in with the pumping system?
I suppose I'm not entirely familiar with the pumping system you're referring to.
Well, Water Precinct has very large pumps that are located behind their land in
Yeah.
the aquifer that parallels the river just north of the village.
They do, they have some deep wells
Okay.
that they supplement the flow with.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wondered how, obviously that isn't necessarily relevant to what you're presenting, and I apologize for that. It's just
We can certainly follow
But now
up the
that
water
we're
I
office to get an answer to
I
your
thought it was an
question.
interesting time to learn more about
Yeah.
how the
Yeah.
whole
Why
thing
not?
I've certainly learned a lot about the setup they have here. By no means do I know as much as someone like Lee Minnick does. But normally we would, draining a reservoir could have, depending on the setting, depending on the particular site, could affect, water supply wells, municipal. So in normal cases, that would be looked into. However, based on what the history and the normal operating procedure of this reservoir being like this pretty regularly is something that isn't a concern for this project, which is unusual, to be honest. Yeah.
So the town must do the mowing and maintaining these outer slopes, because you said it's all grassed and,
The Water Precinct does, yes.
I wish I could say yes.
they have not.
The slopes at this dam are too steep to be mowed. So
Wow.
that is another kind of bonus point for having a relatively, like a 3 horizontal to 1 slope, is that just about any ordinary mower can mow the grass. However, currently the slopes are too steep and irregular and eroded to where
Wow.
it's not really safe to be trying to mow
So are
that,
you
so it
going-
just gets over.
Are you going to,
Yes, they will be, it'll look beautiful grass slope
so,
afterwards.
but you're not gonna have it as steep, so we'll be maintaining it
Yes.
a much.
Yes, yep,
Oh, good, okay.
yep. It'll be a much more operator-friendly and maintainable structure afterwards. Like I said, the dam was constructed in the 1930s. It's gone through a couple periods of repairs and modifications to where it was started off as this small little embankment, and then there was a need to increase reservoir capacity. It was raised. A few years later, it was raised again, and so they just kept raising it, but they just kept going up and didn't go. They didn't
Right.
stabilize the base, and so here we are trying to correct the issues.
Actually, do they plan for future development too? I mean, the town is not going to stay small, and this is obviously not a project that you're going to do, you know, every 5 years. Do they plan, is this have capacity for the town that's, you know, that will increase in size?
Well, remember, this is a private water system, it's paid for by the users. So as the town grows and more connections come on board, there'd be additional revenues flowing to them so that they could maintain and expand it or whatever they need to do. So it's not a town entity, it's private, it's a separate entity. of
It's a
mine.
utility.
I do
Okay.
know your town master plan does speak to how repairs are needed and things along those lines. So it was spoken about in the master
Yeah.
plan, but I'm not sure how it related to necessarily capacity in the future.
If there ever needed to be an increase in, say, you needed to increase storage capacity of upper reservoir, it would not be permitted by the Dam Bureau unless these types of repairs were made.
Okay, but they would have that capacity to enlarge it
It could, yeah.
with need, okay.
Um,
Which I guess, since it's private, I shouldn't worry about it. Okay. Okay. Any questions?
Well, let's look at a couple of the wetland impacts and then we'll certainly have time for more questions. Let's see, we have a nice color-coded one that I think might help us here.
The printer decided to add more color.
It got a little super saturated on this one. All right. So when we're looking at impacts to wetlands in particular, we're looking at these areas shown in yellow. So what has happened is that these are at the toe of the existing dam. They were never meant to be there. They were caused from seepage that's coming out from the dam, like TJ had discussed. So although they are what we would consider artificial, they're still jurisdictional, and so the impacts to them will be something we need to take into account into our major impact project. So we have two sections of permanent wetland impact. Cumulatively, they come to 6,145 square feet. These will be permanent impacts because then when the slope is graded down to 3:1, it will cover over these areas where these wetlands used to be. We will also see 954 square feet of permanent impact to lower reservoir. That is for the changes to the spillway. Again, when this grade goes down, the spillway needs to go out. So some permanent impact is needed in order to match with those grades. We will also have temporary impacts on the order of 250 square feet for the coffer dam, the temporary coffer dam that will come into place. When we look at upper reservoir, we are looking at 7,830 square feet of what we're calling permanent impacts to surface waters. That's this area here, which should be purple, but we've got it striped. I apologize. We are calling those permanent impacts, but what they truly are is a replacement of riprap. There is riprap now, and there will be riprap when we're done, but the grade is just going to end up being smoothed out a little bit. So because we were concerned there might end up with a minor grade change there, we did classify them as permanent impacts rather than temporary. Last but certainly not least, we have our largest impact, which is associated with this temporary access road. It is 15,095 square feet. Again, as TJ was discussing, there's going to be a layer of geotextile fabric down, and then My understanding is large rock will be used to construct the access road. So when they're done, that rock will come out and the geotextile fabric will be rolled back. And so in theory, they will be true temporary impacts and it will be returned to existing conditions upon completion. We have had pre-app meetings with the New Hampshire DES and we've had mitigation meetings. They're looking for us to mitigate for the permanent wetland impacts. They're also looking for us to mitigate to the permanent surface water impacts associated with lower reservoir. They were not concerned about mitigation for the permanent impacts to upper because it's riprap to riprap. And they didn't feel that that was necessarily something that needed to be mitigated for. But we end up with a cumulative total of 33,383 square feet of impact to wetlands, surface waters, and banks, and 617 linear feet of impacts to banks when we speak between the banks of upper and lower reservoir. At this moment, we're looking to do an in lieu fee payment in order to satisfy the mitigation requirements. Those are kind of the broad strokes, so I guess I'll maybe start with any questions that you might have regarding any of these impacts, and we could talk about any of the criteria that we looked at for you folks.
So, excuse me, thank you. So as
Absolutely.
the water's discharged from the dam, it must flow through a channel down through the landscape somewhere, I assume.
Down further in the
Yeah,
landscape?
well, any place beyond the outlet of the dam.
Sure.
Is there a channel of any sort there, or,
Way
What are
down
the-
beyond lower reservoir?
you know, so how far is it piped? So is most of it in pipes, and is it ever an open channel? Is there a stream there anywhere? Is there a
This-
resource of concern, I guess is what I'm looking for? As you come out of
The
the dam.
spillway itself is a concrete open channel,
yeah.
basically like a large flume over
Yeah.
the dam, and it discharges directly into lower reservoir.
And then from lower reservoir it discharges?
From lower reservoir, it discharges over lower reservoir dam into, I believe, a stream.
Well, that's what-
Whittle?
Is it Whittlebrook?
Whittle, that's what I'm trying to get to. Okay,
Whittlebrook.
so,
Whittlebrook.
so there's a stream
Yes.
resource
Yes.
Whittlebrook.
that's involved as well.
Yes, it contributes from, we're a little sideways, but Whittlebrook flows in like such, reaches the surface water, 2 series of surface waters, and then Whittlebrook continues.
Yeah, it eventually flows down, crosses West Union and enters the river.
So NHP check as far as not just the wetlands, but also the stream?
Yep.
Resource.
No hits from NHB, and we've been in discussion with Fish and Game, and so far they haven't had any concerns. They're passing us around to a whole bunch of folks in their office. So we have one more meeting this week, which again is why we haven't submitted yet, because we want to make sure we've spoken to everyone in their office, but so far no one has raised any concerns. There's no, I guess we should speak to that a little bit. There is no fish ladder right now. It's far too steep for one to ever be accommodating. So to my knowledge, no one from the water precinct has been able to tell us that they've ever observed fish of any sort in either reservoir.
And the majority of this reach, including further upstream on Whittlebrook, as well as downstream and lower reservoir, is impacted by dams along the majority, and then none of them
Have fish ladders.
So installing one here would be a little, there would need to be some sort of overall master plan to,
It would be a very, very,
Yes.
very complex and large fish ladder. I don't know if
we're designing
anyone.
one that's 400 feet long right now for a dam in Massachusetts.
Oh, boy.
I don't know if anyone has had the pleasure to walk down here, but it's in quite a steep bowl. Very steep topography all around, which is what kind of contributed, as TJ was talking about. We did quite an extensive alternatives analysis for how we could avoid and minimize to the maximum extent possible. So I know that this 15,000 number does seem quite large. But if they were to, they really can't go this way because there's another dam that's in the way that can't support vehicles, so that's a problem. If you were to come around this way, the topography is actually slow steep. You'd have to cut in a road. It would be significant earthwork, significant tree removal, temporary crossings of, I think, 2 intermittent streams, 1 perennial. It would be quite a mess. And so this was deemed kind of the most practical option.
And the nature of the topography as well contributed to, I think, our choice to propose the in lieu fee. There was really no, there's no space really without massive earthwork to cut in for a replication.
the reason why they chose that site to build a dam back in the day.
It's very true.
Right.
It's topographically convenient for that purpose, yes.
And being familiar with the whole area, I mean, absolutely agree, that is the only sane way to, that temporary access road is the only sane way to do it.
Mhm.
Anything else would be disaster.
It is conveniently I can't think of any other project that I've personally ever worked on where anything like that would work, but specific to this site, it makes sense in a lot of ways.
Okay.
So do we have any comments we want to forward?
And I'm sure you've got an airtight construction sequencing and erosion control plan since it is a drinking water supply.
Yeah.
Airtight.
Indeed.
So I'm assuming this is a kind of, you're waiting for late spring or during the summer and fall? Or
They're looking to start construction this summer, and like I said, 3 to 6 month window of time is what they anticipate for duration. We're looking to submit this as soon as possible. We just want to make sure the last few of our boxes are checked. So we're hoping to submit as soon as within a week, but it could be 2 weeks, but it's in a short time frame, so you will see it come before you for comments. So we just wanted to make sure if you had any questions, we'd be able to answer them for you.
And so assuming all construction materials, obviously everything's gonna come in through the access road that comes off of Mountain Road.
Yes, there is it's
Is that gonna
very faint.
require taking up any space outside the gates and fencing, since that's the most
Big
popular
hiking
recreation
parking.
destination in town, is that parking lot for the mountain hiking?
We don't anticipate, that's the part of the reason why we identified 2 staging areas, one on each side, was
Yeah.
we really wanted to
So you won't have to park a lot of stuff outside.
really wanted to give the contractor space to keep their equipment on site. I mean, I know contractors also tend not, they like to keep their equipment invisible, like, they like to be able to see it.
It'll be
rather
more
than
secure down there behind the gate anyway.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
You don't have to forward any they wanted to do a presentation, and they want to know if you have any concerns or anything, but you don't have to provide any comments to
I guess, do they
DES.
want their books back?
we
Wow.
don't, I know they're quite large, I apologize for all
Yeah,
the trees,
really.
but they're just drafts, so I'm afraid we don't need them back. But if you'd like to recycle them, it would be much appreciated.
Wow.
Well,
So are the plans at a complete
No, they
stage
don't.
right now? You're not gonna
Yes.
see any revisions that need to come back to us?
No.
Okay.
Yep, plans are complete.
I guess if I was gonna make a comment, it would be that, I mean, this has to be done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This-
Oh, yeah. Oh, it sounds
water
like
supply.
it sounds like
And
it's past
I
repair.
think that they have come up with a plan that is probably the best possible plan you could have to address this issue, especially with the topography being on the side of the mountain. And to me, the whole thing makes a lot of sense. What you proposed makes an extraordinary amount of sense. So. I don't know if who that comment would go to, but if we needed to pass a comment.
Makes
sense.
Alright, well, thank you guys for coming in.
If you think of any comments, we have our contact information. We'd be happy to answer anything you think of.
Well, it's a very interesting
Yeah, that's
presentation.
interesting.
Yeah, I appreciate
I'm
it.
curious about where is the beginnings of Whittle Brook? Is it coming off the mountain? Is it?
Oh,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think it shows quite so far.
It doesn't show, I thought kind of on the map.
I was gonna say, I
think it goes up the
There's
hill
a-
there from.
yeah,
what we saw.
vaguely like,
there's
let's
a,
see, it would be northeast, southwest, I think.
there's a res-
There's not a wetland, it's the brook just
It's quite
comes to the
steep.
surface, it's not steep,
Yeah.
it just comes off the top of the mountain, right?
Absolutely.
There's a reservoir further upstream.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, it's not a very large reservoir by any means, but,
I think
The
it
hike
is.
is-
I think a lot of intermittent streams and channels that
Right.
come
Yeah,
together,
and there's a lot of
draining the
other
South Mountain.
kinda-
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
And it's not usually a very big stream most of the year, although during some of the intense storms and stuff, by the time you get down to West Union Street, I've seen it
It's
as a
roaring.
raging torrent.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's quite small up in here. It gets
Yeah.
quite narrow.
yeah, one of the one of the deficiencies that will be addressed in this project is hydraulic capacity. So I'm sure, as you all know, just increasing storm intensities. So when you reevaluate these structures to assess whether or not the spillways can handle the floods that they should be designed to handle, often what's found is that no, they can't. And for an embankment dam, the result of that is floodwater overflowing the earthen embankment itself. Then for any amount of overtopping of an earthen embankment is a runaway train
Right.
to failure of the
I
dam.
think you just formed my next question, which is, so people are looking at impacts of climate change and modeling and increased storm precipitation and events, and are those models being taken into account for the design of this update?
The updated spillway will be designed to handle, I believe it is a multiple of the 100-year flood. I believe it's 250% of the 100-year flood, or something quite large.
Oh, the new 50-year flood, you're saying?
You're
No, I understand.
It is the design flood required by the current Dam Bureau regulations.
Which
Yeah, I
do
just
seem
don't-
to look to the future for these issues.
Just don't have any
I
sense.
do not believe that those design guidelines account for or try to project climate, floods associated with climate change.
They must have an emergency evacuation plan for this dam. Well, I'm just curious now, it's getting really serious now. Well, I know we have one for the Uncanunic,
Of course,
you
they
know.
do.
An emergency action plan.
It's
Yeah.
permitted by DES, absolutely. They have to have it.
Hey,
Fair, yeah.
It's called runtime. Breaks, how much time do you have to run?
yeah.
One of the advantages with this dam is that because it does have a bottom valve or a low-level drain, if the water precinct knows that a serious storm is en route, they can drain the reservoir to provide some reserve flood storage, or lower it partially, or however much they think they might need to.
Now, don't you feel real assured about that now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's great. Okay.
Awesome.
I like to drink water though, that's.
Oh.
The balance between letting it go and saving it, right?
Well, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank
It's
you.
actually
Thank
very
you all for your
interesting.
time.
Really. It's actually neat. Have you hiked down around that area? And yeah, I
pretty
mean,
cool.
it really is.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to go inside the fencing.
Actually,
Just, yeah,
I've done it.
Of course not.
never been in
We
it.
never hike there.
What do you think of it?
Alright,
I guess we better take those trails off the map that's posted right there, then all the ones that go inside the fence.
It's great fishing in there. What?
No, there's no fishing.
Okay. Well, that
uh,
was interesting.
yeah.
That was interesting.
Very interesting. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Safe drive.
Thank you.
So next up, we have a staff plan review
We got this
for
email.
map 10 lot 10. A conceptual plan for a proposed 6-lot open space subdivision with shared driveways. Property is located at 102 Tenney Road, owned by David Klebanov.
I'm gonna look at
Did I
it.
say that correctly?
Yeah, that was good.
Nice. Zoned agricultural. And that's,
So the last page, this got added on, it came in after your packets went out, and Joanne, the planner, asked me to just show it to you guys, because there is a wetland on it. It's the last set of plans that's on the table. It's going before, planning board tomorrow night. So,
The single sheet.
okay. So they want to do a 6-lot open space subdivision with reduced frontages, and they're looking at having like a common driveway area. Suffolk Tenny Road. You can see that there is a wetland that's mainly on the abutting property, but it goes onto this property as well. Kind of is up above it.
When you say abutting, can you please specify
Behind-
north, south, east, west? Are you talking about the prime wetland?
Yeah. I believe it's, I have to look at it from a GIS map. So it's kind of like,
This is a wetland, this is a wetland.
this is just a conceptual plan. So there's one, I believe it's on this side of it.
Okay.
So it would be on the west side? No? Is that the west side? I don't know how this falls. Where's the?
Yeah, this is up in the
East.
whole drumlin field area,
Yeah.
so that basically this is a drumlin that's coming down through this section, this side of the map, and then it's draining very steep on the sides, draining
Yeah.
down into the prime wetland. It's the same prime wetland that is behind the Clark Ridge.
Okay.
Yes, actually,
Property.
yeah, and that's shown right on the 10-3s right here.
Right, okay.
So the majority of the wet area would be in the proposed open space. What staff isn't, for an open space, you have a buffer all the way around and they're required to have 60 feet and they're not having the buffer come all the way around the lot. So I know some of the other staff is not happy with this proposed design, but
Okay.
they wanted to go forward to get input from the planning board and see if they would, this design, they would support.
So the buffer going all the way around the lots.
They usually,
But in this case, I mean, if they were to proceed, and I'm not necessarily, recommending for or against or whatever, but if they were to proceed, that would be a really crazy thing to do in this situation. We have this prime wetland over here.
Right.
Absolutely, as much of this land as possible should be protecting that prime wetland, plus this drumlin. This is very steep.
well,
They
And if-
erode very easily if they're
Unstable.
disturbed because they're loam that sits on top of a base of clay. And when you don't have the trees there, that loam gets saturated in the spring and the winter and it slumps. And I can take people to drumlins in town and show that.
okay, but what I want to
Um,
say is if it doesn't support it, then they should probably decrease the lots.
Well,
Or the size, they're pretty big back here,
Yeah.
but generally, it's in our ordinance, there's required to have a 60-foot, at least a 60-foot buffer. If you remember the August,
yeah,
open space, they had a little area and they had to maintain that 60 feet. It may not support having 6 lots, they may have to do 5 lots.
Yeah,
well,
well, I wouldn't disagree with that.
That's,
But that would
Yeah.
just be my comment though, is that buffering and protecting the prime wetland and protecting the soils and the structure of the drumlin, which they're unstable when they're developed.
so do you want to,
There should be a strong emphasis to protect those two features from an environmental point of view.
so I
So
would
this is the one
recommend,
that's
like, if you
running
want
right
to
through
do like
here?
a motion, say, you could say, we conceptually looked at this plan, recommend, however this is designed, the main concern is to protect the drumlin, the prime wetland.
well, I think we got more than that as a main concern. I think we're gonna have.
And this could
is a
all
wetland
change and come
that's
back
running
as
right
totally
through the
different.
center of
Right.
it.
It's
Right.
just a conceptual before they engineer to get, see
see
if the planning
Yeah.
board would support
Well, that's
it.
what I want, yeah, I just wanted to say, I have other concerns.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not just the only concern, that's a big concern. And maybe, there's a wetland that's running right through the center of this, starting in 10-10-3. And they're supposed to be having a setback, it's within the setback, right?
I don't know if they showed all that
I
on
don't
there.
know.
Dot.
I'm not
There's
sure.
no
With the
setback
little
shown
line?
somewhere.
Doesn't show.
There's no setbacks for anything
Oh,
shown.
okay, so it's running,
So you could
It's
say
pretty
maintain the
close to their
100-foot
well.
setback.
and the other thing, I'm sorry, and I own a piece of property that has a shared driveway.
Yeah.
That is a real disaster, and I just can't see that we're gonna go through that. I mean, it just, I've had 2 different owners in the last 30 years of the other. It is just one huge battle, and the road is eroding away, and it's a big mess. And I personally, I just thought that we aren't doing that anymore.
Planning board will pick up on it,
Well,
for
boy.
sure.
So my concerns here, he's talking about the drumlin. It is that this wetland is running right straight through the center of lot, 1, 2, and 3. And, yeah, I'm
Concern with shared driveway.
Oh, yeah, big time. But also that they've got, it must be a kind of a drainage wetland, or is this they don't have, what are they?
Yeah,
Remember, it's conceptual, it's not a fully engineered.
Yeah,
Right,
I understand, but that's just another concern right there.
Is drainage.
No, it's-
drainage and also setbacks from that
Setbacks.
wetland. We don't know
yeah.
how big it is or how extensive it is, and we don't know much about that
Right, because the
wetland
lots
coming
are
through. We
drained.
know a lot about the prime one on the other side, but we don't
Do you
know
know which
anything
prime,
about this.
what is the prime wetland? Do you know which one it is?
You know, I should
I
rattle
can
off
look it
my
up
tongue,
when I
but
go upstairs. So, protect the prime wetland, drumlin.
Potential sister.
Concern with the design. You're not concerned, you would wanna, if they were, redesign it, or how do you wanna word your issues with the protecting the prime wetland?
Well, I
Just to
just want to
protect
say
the
that
line.
we have a number of concerns. We have concerns, and also want to mention one that Evelyn's raising, but for me, the biggest concern is protecting the prime wetland and as much of the drumlin as possible from development, because they are unstable when the forest is cut on them. And also it's coupled so closely, the whole ecosystem there is coupled so closely with the wetland. That's why we're making so much effort to try to protect this area.
So any clearing or anything that they have to do here is still gonna affect the
But, yeah, we
amount of
don't-
water that's gonna keep.
We also have concerns about this other wetland, as
Yeah.
Evelyn's pointed out. We don't really know much about it. We don't know how extensive it is. We don't know where it's going to. Just based on this plan, we'd have to certainly understand a lot more about it to be able to
And I
comment.
think for all of those reasons, I think this is one of these situations where we may want to see individual development plans for each of the lots. Where's your driveway going? Where are you gonna clear? How are you gonna handle stormwater? All those sorts of things, for all the reasons that everybody's already.
Right, but I guess I would also say that we might suggest that they have fewer lots. I, again, just think you're looking at a real bucket of worms to have these shared driveways. That is access, now, one of these is going to access 3 lots and the other one is the 2 lots. I mean, I just think you're really asking.
Well, and it looks like, based on this conceptual, that first of all, in this conceptual, they would show the potential housing locations all to the left side of that finger-like wetland
Yes.
running through, so they don't have to cross it and impact it. Great. But you can also see by the drawings of their 75-foot well radius that every single one of those lots would be within the 100-foot setback. Assuming the 100-foot setback applies, again, we don't know the size of this wetland.
Right.
So it just looks very problematic for a lot of reasons.
Okay.
And individual development plans for each of the lots would highlight a lot of those issues.
And they did meet with staff at TRC, and they did not support the design, but they still chose to come forward and just get input from the planning board.
Well, no, let me ask one other question. So you're saying open space, this is open space here? It's not
Yes.
something,
That would never be developed, the open
right?
space.
So how, and I don't know if you want people to have access to it, but access to this, is this what, there's their access
There is
to
no
go?
access, that is the
There
other,
is-
that's part of when it goes around, you usually have an access to the open space, and there isn't
And
any
there,
access.
well, then that's, if it's truly an open space and they're actually gonna go with this, and then that's another issue, that there is no access to that.
Yeah, but in this situation, I'm a lot
Probably
more
don't want
concerned
it.
about protecting the resource,
Oh, man, I
because it is
just-
a prime wetland. This, if you read the description and the prime wetland studies that were done when we established them, this wetland was singled out for having extremely high environmental values and habitat quality, and that's, so it's a good one.
Okay.
But that's a lot to capture.
Other than
Yeah, I
that,
can.
Yeah, concern, a lot of concerns here.
yeah.
No.
Yeah, right, you got it, whoa.
No, I got it, that I could, and I'll copy you guys on it.
Well, it's a good thing it was a conceptual, I mean, it's better to know, yeah, because sometimes,
And they'll come in here when they're, if they
Yeah, they'll-
go for it, they'll come in here, and it may come in as less lots, I don't know.
well, I think it's, yeah, because I think we've had
I know.
occasionally get something that they've really gone through all the planning, and then we look at it and say, well, this is really, and we come up with all these concerns. So at least they spent less money and
First
just,
step.
yeah, first
Yeah,
step.
and they wanted, yeah, before engineering, they wanted to get in.
I think that's fine, we don't like it. But we have lots of concerns.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
they
that's
wanna hear,
fine.
then they'll hear what the planning board, and that'll help them to lead, and however they decide to move forward.
Okay.
Well, I guess one other thought was that, and again, don't care much for what I'm saying here, but should something go forward here and there's a sizable open space area created, it would be so much better if that open space were like conveyed to a land trust like PLC or something like that, rather than being this homeowners thing which turns into a off-road vehicle park or whatever. Especially, again, because of the prime wetland and the fact that, you know, we're working hard to protect the land around that particular prime wetland as we speak,
Like
on
feels.
the other sides of it. And so to have it continue the protection of that resource, should do like with Blackbriar,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like
where
Blackbriar did.
where the land was donated to the land trust as opposed to, I think that just works better in general, and we should have more,
I think
more
particularly with
projects
this
done that way. Cause that turned out to be a huge success.
Okay.
So now you know why they asked me to bring it to you guys.
All right.
That was it.
Alright. Well, up next we have the acceptance of the minutes of February 2nd, 2023.
I don't have anything, but I'm also asking myself, did I actually read those minutes?
You can also delay if you wanna delay it to.
Well, there was a lot of stuff to read before this meeting.
Yes,
so
we can delay voting on
I'm
till
not
the
sure if
next
I've
meeting.
covered that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you read those, David? I didn't, I think I got it.
Oh, I think I did. I remember this now. I didn't have any issues with it.
Um, Well, if you didn't have any issues, did anybody else have any issues?
Nope.
I did not.
Move to accept the minutes as written.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Great. Next up, we have a request to be a member of the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission needs to make a recommendation to the Select Board to appoint Jane Raymond as a member of the Conservation Commission for a 3-year term expiring 2026. We have openings for a regular member and an alternate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then
Ms.
Susan.
Raymond, why don't you come on up so we can grill you a little bit?
Yeah. Now, it says also Susan needs to be reappointed.
Hi,
Expiring
Jane.
Hi, you want me to be here?
Yeah,
Yep.
sure.
this year.
Sure, okay.
Hello.
I babysat my grandson and he was sick, so I don't
Oh,
wanna
yeah.
give whatever it was
Appreciate that.
to anyone else.
As she described it as green boogers coming from his mouth, his nose.
Okay, Evelyn, that comes under the category of TMI.
Yeah.
But to start with, thanks for your interest.
Yeah, thank you.
You're no stranger, obviously, to the
Yeah.
Conservation Commission, what we do and all those sort of
Yeah.
things. So you bring up,
But the setting has, the last time I was a conservation commissioner, we were at a wiggly table in a little
Oh.
closet somewhere. And we, this is a much nicer setting.
Oh, it is.
We'd
Yeah.
be happy to have you.
Well,
I agree.
I'm retired and I feel like I've got enough time to do a little volunteering. And Evelyn said, Jane, you should do that.
I was very excited to have her. Yeah, she was
So,
a very good member for 10 years, and, her background's far more educated than I am, and so,
So what we do is we make a recommendation
to the selectmen.
select board.
Okay.
And then if she's approved, then she has to come in, right, and get
Get
sworn
Sworn
in.
in. Yeah, she'll get the.
oh, Patty will tell me what to do, I'm
No,
sure.
yeah, that's true. She
And
tells all
or
of us,
Kathy
believe
will
me.
contact you and
Yeah.
be sworn in.
Kathy's sick, she's not there.
Well, can I make a motion?
Of course you can.
Yeah.
That we accept the volunteer's application for a position here on our Conservation Commission? This is for Jane.
Motion to recommend a point.
Yes, okay.
Do we
yes.
have to say if it's an
And do we have to
alternate or
say
not?
I
that,
would do a
I
regular.
mean, for a regular, yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, for a
To
regular
recommend.
position. What?
I'll second.
Oh, great,
All
okay.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining?
Yeah, great.
Brutal, wasn't it?
Aye.
Well, that's great, that's exciting.
Do you wanna do Susan too?
Oh, I have to.
Pardon me?
sign that
Oh,
place, Susan?
actually,
What?
you can't, because you won't have a quorum.
What?
You can't
Oh.
appoint Susan, because we, calls is not
Oh,
a.
we were saying, can we do Susan?
Well, we're not
But
appointing
then
her, we're just
Rec-
recommending.
Recommending, but to make a you can't make a motion because you don't have enough people to vote.
She can't vote.
Well,
She
you
can't
can
do-
abstain.
Is there's,
Yeah,
is
you
there,
can, you
is
can
that
abstain.
actually a rule that you can't vote to recommend yourself?
She can, you can
think-
do that, she can
Where's the
abstain.
I can abstain.
Yeah,
Wait a
that's true,
second,
yeah.
wait a second, I think his point is valid.
Well, yeah, I can. I don't know.
I don't,
I
she
don't,
sits,
or she could abstain and we still have a quorum,
Yep,
so, either way.
okay.
It's all good.
You have 4 people, so you can vote.
I make a motion that we recommend to the select board to reappoint Susan Tucker, provided she agrees to behave herself for another 3 years. Okay, that might be asking too much.
I
The
second
vortex
that
is
one.
sucking you in
Okay, do we have a
again.
second? All those in favor?
I
Opposed?
Do I need to abstain? or-
Abstaining?
don't
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what I have to or not, though. It's okay.
Why not?
Why
I'll
not?
put you abstained.
That's great.
All right, we have some correspondence. Nice. Well, wait.
What?
Do you need to stay or hang out if you want to? I'm not sure.
Are we?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm staying.
Oh, no, she's
Awesome,
gonna,
great.
yeah, as long as she's here.
I didn't know if we had to clear you.
No.
Great.
I'm hard to get rid of.
Fine by me. So we have some correspondence, copy of Namaskae Lake dive bid for the milfoil treatment. Ooh. The town's proposed approximate share will be up to $7,050.
And on that, I have a request. It's in your handouts that were on the table. He submitted an invoice and he's asking to be reimbursed $1,750. And he's coming to you to vote on paying that fund. I know there's gonna be an issue if you add the two together, what they've been quoted on. This all comes
It's
in
gonna
after the
be-
budget process, and the budget committee took another $3,500 off of what we already did, so
So now we're gonna be short?
we could be, which,
that was
so you
my
can't commit the
concern
full
last
amounts to both of them, but in the past, what has happened is we get this quotes, and then it comes to the summer, and then they don't need all this work done, and that's what has happened, that's why we were asked to decrease it, and that's why the budget committee decreased it. But his request right now is asking for the 1,750. I don't feel that's an unreasonable request right now. And you, maybe at the next meeting, maybe talk about how much we can commit towards each one now that you have the two quotes.
Okay.
So I think that in going forward, we should maybe try to get out in front of this and make some statements to the budget committee, because I understand they want the number to be small. Of course, everybody in town wants the budget number to be small. This is such an insignificant portion of the town's budget, and yet the impact of not doing the treatment can lead to higher costs down the road. I just think that we should have a little bit more flexibility, because we don't spend it if it isn't needed. If they allocate $10,000 to clean milfoil and it only costs $5,000, well, that $5,000 doesn't get spent. It's not hurting the town. On the other hand, missing treatments could actually just lead to further expenses down the road. So I think we need to be a little smarter about that and have a little bit of play there in the budgets
So,
to acknowledge that, because nobody's going to see a fraction of a penny in their tax bill as a result of it when you look at the grand scheme of things. That's just I'll get off my soapbox now.
I
but-
agree with
agree.
David. What was our total cost for milfoil? What's the total?
Our budget was 20,000,
20,000.
and we're now at
We're now-
13,500.
We're 13. Okay,
now, and also,
Well,
500.
we have added the river upstream
right.
to be
right.
treated, which will need to be done, and that's what's made the cost go up on the side of, Goffstown Waterways, because that's included in theirs now, whereas before they weren't looking at it, and they came in,
Well, yeah,
that's an important cleanup
Right, that is
there.
really important.
Yeah.
That-
The
because that's where it's
upstream
coming
more.
they were at 9,000. I have my little,
Oh, so then,
9,000 something.
9,000. So,
9,495.
Okay.
Patty, is Manchester in, we went to them years ago and said, you do own part of this waterway down here, and we have the milfoil problem, can you contribute to it? Which they were actually in shock that I think they forgot about the whole area, but then they did contribute
They
something.
did contribute.
Yeah. Are they continuing to,
I don't think so. I
and
don't
should
believe
we?
they're being, I don't know if they approached them, and we also approached them. That's when they did it, and I think they gave them 5,000 at that time. And that was, their cost of the Nemaska Lake has been going down. But who knows this year? I don't know how the drawdown of Glen Lake will affect milfoil.
I was wondering about that too,
I have no
Yeah.
idea. I mean, we can send a letter asking if they can contribute again and help Nemaska Lake.
which is part of their,
It's where they launch the boats from,
Right,
on the west side.
right, it's a boat launch for Manchester, so. I
can
do
reach
think that we
them
need to
and-
always, we always need to keep them in the loop, because that is part of cleaning up and then their responsibility too. They were good when we approached them, but anyway, I do think that's something we should do, okay?
Okay,
Um,
well, I do think we have, either, if not tonight, the next meeting, we need to, because this all came in this month of each one. That I've been kind of copying you guys through email. What you can commit towards each one so they know, so they don't just go ahead and then they think we can reimburse. And I'll talk further with the town administrator. But
Yeah.
right now, I didn't know if the commission would be willing to approve the release of the request that he had for the 1,000.
And that was for what again?
They're doing, he has divers, 3 days of diving. It's on the back, it's on the handouts that you received.
So he's planning on doing this starting in the winter?
No, they're applying for the grants, this is their grant time, so they're
Okay,
applying for the
okay.
grants, and they're, and that, the cost of what they received was a total, it's based on 8 days, it's diving, it's not herbicidal, I'm not seeing the herbicidal treatment, and it's 14,100, and then we pay half of that share is what we normally do, but if they get awarded the grant, it's half the cost. But they had to put a deposit down, and that deposit was 1,750 for the contract.
Okay.
Which is, the bottom line of the contract, without a grant, is 14,000, you said?
Yeah, and the state, they get half of it from the state, and then they have to come up with local costs.
We have to come up with.
They have to, the association,
Right.
but they generally come to the town, and we have been doing that.
Right. Okay.
So the local cost would be that, half of that, the
As
7,000.
far as the budget process and the budget being reduced, I can predict what the response will be. And the response will be, we held public hearings on the proposed budget. That was the opportunity to voice your concerns, and we didn't hear from you.
And that was when?
Well, that's why I say we need to get in front of it.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying,
Well, when we were approached, we agreed to decrease it.
Yep.
In good,
They decreased it even more, didn't they?
they did, the
Yeah,
budget
right.
committee, so we
Right.
went, we decreased it, was it 3,000, and we went back to, saying we'll decrease it 3,000, and then it went to budget, and then they got voted to decrease it even more.
Right, yeah.
Oh, so it's not like we were totally disengaged either.
No, the town administrator did approach me and say, hey, can you bring this to the commission? Are they looking at the same amount? Are they decreasing it?
We
He actually did
decreased
a
it, right.
spreadsheet showing how we haven't been using the money. And it's a lot less that we were using than what we were asking for. So, and it could come back the same way. You don't know.
Which is the rationale they used for cutting it.
Yeah, and
They've
then,
given it to you, you have been using it, so therefore you must not need it.
Right.
I believe that the cost of this treatment has gone up, it appears. But then their grant process happens after our budget committee process.
But you know-
If we have this ahead of time, then we know what we need and we have the backup.
But that's also assuming that the milfoil is going to grow the same quantity and height and et cetera every single year. And there are some years where we have much more sunlight and warmer temperatures, and maybe if the lake is lower, then you're really going to have much more growth than you are summers that it's cooler and the waters are higher and they don't have the sunlight. I mean, I'm just looking at where we are in Newfound Lake, and we're up at the Hebron Bay, which gets shallower. And when you have a nice, sunny, warm, not so much rain summer, you get a lot more growth going on up there than you do, other times. So I'm sorry, but I understand saying you haven't been spending all of this money, so we're, assuming, but there will be times where it's going to cost more just because there is more growth.
And then we could always request to add it back in the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, we can.
So we're dealing with making a motion to pay.
What he's asking me,
Right,
what he submitted, he's asking if we'll reimburse the 1,750.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion that we reimburse that at this point.
Now, has the other group asked for anything? The one that's up on the Glen Lake?
She's applied, she's going through the grant process right now, but she hasn't signed the contract. I haven't gotten anything, and she hasn't requested for the initial down payment being reimbursed.
And that will also include the upstream
Yeah.
portion where we know
And
it,
we
where we
added
know
the
it is
upstream
bad.
to it through the state.
Because if we're lucky, Glen Lake itself may not be so bad.
But
But we know the upstream is a big mess because
Mm-hmm.
it's been ignored, even though it's been pointed out over and over and over. It's finally being addressed.
Yeah, and Amy Smuller from New Hampshire DS included that all in it.
Well, so we have Sue's motion on the table.
Yeah, second it.
All those in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Wonderful.
We'll just put this on the agenda for next month, so we can.
Talk further.
Yeah,
Because I do think we should let them know what we can commit.
right, right.
Mm.
We'll have to come up with a, right.
And we have some more correspondence. We have the long-term milfoil management plan for Glen Lake that we all have. DES letter requesting information for town's culvert repair on Leech Hill Road. Request for a congratulations letter. Copy of NHDES wetlands permit by notification application to repair a retaining wall along the Nemaska Lake located at 18 Shore Drive, and then a copy of a shoreline impact permit for map 36 lot 69 Elm Street. And then any open space updates?
No, don't have any updates at this time. Nothing beyond what said last meeting.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to adjourn then.
Susan makes a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Can you abstain from that?
Sure.
Why would you? Alright. Motion
Probably not, I don't know unless the dam has a major change, but the Chatella one, probably not, but definitely the conceptual. That one's just good guidance.
Right.